We got some hints on the next PS5 firmware update. Resident Evil just hit a huge sales milestone. We've got the best SSD for the PS5, and we just found out a really cool way that stores are stopping scalpers. So this is gonna come as no surprise to you guys, but Resident Evil is one of my favorite franchises of all time. Honestly, if I had to pick my favorite game of all time, Resident Evil 4 would definitely be very high on that list of my favorite games. So if you made me pick my favorite game of the year right now, it would definitely be Resident Evil Village. That game had everything I've ever wanted in a horror game. It's a first-person shooter, it has awesome bosses, it makes you explore a Romanian village that's absolutely terrifying, and even though it takes place in the modern day, it cuts off cell phones and other things like that that give you that get out of jail free card in so many horror movies. Like this game, I'm gonna go back and replay it for Halloween very soon. It is so good. And one of the cool things about it being one of the best and best-selling games of 2021 is that people want to know more about its main character, Ethan Winters, because I'm not gonna spoil anything, but if you get to the end of Village, you get some weird story updates on Ethan Winters, and it actually flashes back to Resident Evil 7. And it looks like a lot of people are playing Village and wanting to go back to play 7 because Capcom just announced that it passed 10 million sales across all the different consoles, which is even crazier if you consider that that's one of the games that's been on the PS Plus collection ever since the PS5 came out. So people who have Resident Evil Village on their PS5 have the option to just download it if they have PS Plus, but they're also just buying the game. And that's great because if you put the two games side by side, as much as I love Village, Biohazard is definitely my favorite of the two. The setting is just a lot better in my opinion. Going down to the deep south, you're exploring a mansion filled with mold and just disgusting creatures, and even though it doesn't have zombies and werewolves and all these other cool things that I like, it has these moldy guys that like shamble around the house, and they're genuinely scary. The shooting feels great, the boss battles are better than Resident Evil Village, like you fight Jack Baker in a chainsaw fight, and it pulls from all my favorite movies. Guys, I gotta tell you real quick about today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Obviously, I've heard about this game before because I've watched a YouTube video before in my life, but I finally decided to give it a shot. Check out my links down in the description to download it on your PC or your mobile device. Orcs get a bad rap in fantasy, but in Raid, they're not all that bad. While they were created by the Dark Lord Searoth, they have a good reason to not like humans. After a brutal war fought against the Banner Lords, High Elves, and Sacred Order, their lands were annexed, forcing most of the Orc clans to become nomadic. Now they're mostly just trying to survive. Seeing an ally in Queen Eva of the Elves, they've now joined her cause, but they don't know her true motivations just yet. Want to find out more? Play the campaign for the full story. There's also Orc champions in the game now, and they look really cool. Here are some of my favorites. Now there's a ton to do in this game, but the aspect that really stood out to me is the champion collecting aspect of it. You can upgrade them, you can add gear to them, you can collect this little team of different heroes. And also, since it's October, they've got a Halloween event going on right now with PvP tournaments and also some legendary champions. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description or scan my QR code, and you'll get an epic hero, Chinoru, who is amazing in the Doom Tower, 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in the game. And you gotta remember that this is only available to new players for the next 30 days. Once you're in the game, you can find me under the username BlackHills99, and if you're fast, you can join my clan. And it's that easy, just click the link in the description and I'll see you in the game. I just thought it was cool that the game has sold 10 million copies because I remember when it came out, even though it sold a lot, Capcom said they were a little bit disappointed in the sales, and I don't know how they could be at this point in time with that many copies sold. Halloween's coming up, so if you want a spooky game to play and you've already played Resident Evil Village, I highly recommend going on the PS Plus collection or just waiting for a Halloween sale on the PlayStation Store and picking up Resident Evil 7 Biohazard because it is awesome. So in my last video, we talked about how Best Buy's new way to fight scalpers is to become one with its Total Tech program. Basically what that is, if you haven't heard of it, is it's like a $200 membership program you can join at Best Buy that gives you Apple Care Plus on every Apple device you buy, and also lets you skip to the front of the line on buying a PS5. You know, they want to make that extra $200 that all the scalpers are making by buying a PS5 for $500 and selling it for $700. Unfortunately, there's a bad update here because in that video where we talked about Total Tech, we thought of this loophole where if you paid the $200 to skip the line and buy a PS5, you could then just cancel Total Tech within 60 days of buying it and get your $200 back. And it seems like Best Buy thought of this before us because we found out they have a clause in the contract you sign that says specifically if you sign up and buy a PS5, you cannot get your $200 back. They'll deduct it like the cost of the PS5 or the bonus you get from the refund if you go in and try and get it. So it seems like Best Buy might have to go back to the drawing board on their way to fight scalpers because the backlash is already starting, and I like the way that this store in Japan is doing it. So basically the way this works is that if I had a little store in Japan that only sold PS5s, I'd be in business for like 60 days tops, but in those 60 days, when my shipment of PS5 showed up, as soon as someone buys a PS5 for me, I write the name of the person who bought it on the box with this felt tip marker. And then if they try and buy another PS5 for me a week later, I check my little database, my Google Sheet, and I say, all right, this guy tried to buy a PS5 for me already. No way is he getting another one. And another issue this creates for scalpers, again, is that even if you wipe off the marker on the box, you can still see it scratched into the box and you can see it in pictures. So if I'm a scalper and I just got a PS5 from a store and I go get another one that has my name on it, I figure it out somehow, and then I throw it up on eBay, my first and last name is on the box and these stores can scan it. And that's just kind of weird, right? Like if I'm selling my PS5 as brand new and there's someone else's name written on the box and there's no way to take it off, I'm not gonna wanna buy that PS5 for full price because it's technically not brand new. Because if I ever went to resell it, if you ever sell stuff on eBay, even if it's used, if you still have the original box, it usually sells for like 50, 60 bucks more. I've done this before, that's how I know. And if someone else's name is written on it, that's just taking away that potential resale value that I would get in the long run. It's crazy that the PS5 shortage has gotten to this point where retailers have to figure out weird systems like Total Tech or writing people's names on boxes, but hey, if the companies making these consoles aren't gonna do anything about scalpers, it's up to the store owners to do it. And Jim's PS5 shop, when it opens for its limited run of 50 to 60 days, because I'll never make any money, I will definitely do this felt tip marker process. But if you wanna figure out the best way to beat the scalpers, make sure you're following PSReady on Twitter at StayPSReady. It's linked down in the description. So now that the firmware update finally came out for the PS5 that lets you install an SSD into the device, the one thing that's making it really hard to get an SSD for the console is getting one with the heatsink. So right now there are three main options: the Gigabyte Aorus, the Seagate 530, and the WD Black SN850. All of these come with a heatsink option and you're not gonna end up paying that much more for it. But the one SSD it seems like people have been really wanting is the Samsung 980 Pro. Now you can just buy it without the heatsink and get a heatsink on Amazon and apply it yourself, but that's a lot more effort than I feel like a lot of people are willing to put in. They'll probably just go for one of the other three options I listed, and Samsung finally became wise to this because there is now available a Samsung 980 Pro with a heatsink already installed. Now, as we showed in the video where I tried out the beta of this update, if you install an SSD without a heatsink in your PS5, it's gonna work and it'll probably work just fine. The problem with these SSDs though is as they heat up, they actually get slower and you lose performance, and on top of that, you don't want something boiling hot sitting there right inside your PS5 away from a fan that's going to keep it cool. You know, those are two bad things you don't want when you get a new SSD. So that's why the heatsink is so important. Now, I'm not personally someone who's really brand loyal. I don't really care all that much, honestly. I'll just get whatever's cheapest and the best, like that middle ground between cheap and good. But Samsung, when it comes to SSDs, is the company I usually will go with because I edit a lot of YouTube videos and I use these Samsung T5 drives, which are just SSDs in a little enclosure that have USB-C cords, and I really like them. They never fail, they last a long time, and they're fast as hell. And the cool thing is Samsung isn't charging you an arm and a leg for these good drives either. This one's priced competitively with all the other options, and speaking of those, every one of these will be linked down in the description if you want to check one out for yourself. So now that the big firmware update for the PS5 that allows you to use the SSD that we just talked about is out of the way, people are kind of speculating what's going to happen next. We talked about what people want in another video, which is mainly themes and folders on the dashboard, you know, in the cross media bar, and it seems like Sony is actually listening because the SVP of PlayStation Experiences, Hideaki Nishino, said that he's already working on the next update and he's paying attention to what the community wants. In fact, he specifically said, when I look back at the list of things we need to do, there's a lot the community is asking for as well. I want to say in the Japanese way, I'm diligently working on these lists and there will be more coming out in the future. Now, I've been a PlayStation fan for a long time, and one thing I've always thought is really cool about Sony is that they'll pack in a ton of features into one big update, and they'll market these updates with like one feature, right? Like the SSD upgrade availability, but then you go into the update and there's a ton of hidden stuff, like the reorganized trophy list, for example. They've always done that, especially with the PSP. I remember the one day that I got a game, I forget exactly which game it was, but they used to pack in the firmware updates required for the game on the UMD, and I applied the firmware upgrade expecting it to do nothing, and then suddenly I had a web browser on my PSP and it actually worked, which was awesome. The same thing happened on PSP with Killzone Liberation. They packed in a firmware update that allowed you to get DLC for that game. It was just cool to have my PSP functionally change over time and get new features. The same thing happened with the Vita. When that console came out, you couldn't play PS1 games on it, and then suddenly a day in October it updated and I was able to download all the PS1 games I had digitally on my PS3, on my PS Vita, and get the saves as well. So I downloaded Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and I played it. It was such a good Halloween game at the time, and that firmware upgrade gave me an awesome PlayStation memory. So as far as what I'd like to see out of the PS5, I'd really like them to continue upgrading the controller to make it better on battery life. I know that they cut down on the LED lights in the controller to make the battery last longer because the light on the DualShock 4 was so bright that it would suck the battery out of the controller, but they also added in stuff with the DualSense like adaptive triggers, haptic feedback, all of these other battery sucking things, and if the controller can get more efficient over time so that the battery lasts longer, that'd be great, because I use the PS5 as my media center device. I have a Roku TV. I don't know if you guys have ever used a Roku. They absolutely suck. They're slow as hell, especially when they're built into the TV. So now the PS5 has awesome apps already built in and they work great. So I use the PS5 because it's just so much quicker. I'd love if I could make it so that the battery in my controller doesn't die just from watching like Squid Game on Netflix. You know what I mean? I definitely said Roku TV. I meant Roku, obviously. So yeah, don't get mad at me in the comments, please. Obviously, the biggest feature I want, please, Sony, add this. It doesn't seem that hard, is 1440p support natively. My monitor at my desk is 144 hertz 1440p monitor. It looks amazing. I'd love to use my PS5 on it, but when I plug the PS5 into the monitor, instead of going to 4K and downscaling it to 1440p, which would honestly look amazing, it goes from 1440p to 1080p, and that looks bad. Straight up bad. I did not buy a PS5 to play games at 1080p. I'm sorry, I'm an elitist there. And guys, as someone who has both consoles but uses the PS5 as his main console, they gotta steal this feature from Xbox, which is quick resume. Basically, if you have like 5 games running and you switch games on Xbox, it'll just save state them. Like full on Series X games can be save stated alongside Xbox 360 games, Xbox One games, it doesn't matter. I remember I started Kingdom Hearts 1 and I was like, this is too much for me right now. I put it into a save state under a quick resume, and then like 6 months later, I turned on my Xbox Series X and went to play Kingdom Hearts again to give it another shot, and it was right where I left off. It works even if you unplug the Xbox. Now, I don't like giving Xbox a ton of credit, but that is a legitimately cool feature, and Sony has all of the same parts inside their PS5, so it seems like a development thing on the back end they need to get working on. And you know, the other feature they gotta steal is smart delivery. When you compare the way that updating a game from the PS4 to the PS5 works versus updating from the Xbox One to the Series X, it is no competition. If you go to the Xbox store, click download on a game you want to play on your Series X, it'll download the Series X version and you're good to go. Your saves just transfer, it's great. On the PS5, you gotta have both versions of the games. Now you can have 2 hard drives in your thing so you can have more space for this, but still, having the PS4 version of Avengers and then transferring the save to the PS5 version of Avengers is stupid and I don't like it, so they gotta fix that. But yeah, that's what I want in the 3.0 update for the PS5. Let me know what you want down in the comments below. Anyway guys, that's all the PlayStation news I have for you today. Make sure you let me know what you think of all of it down in the comments, and remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.